Hi, I'm author Abby Tyler, and today I'm going to be reading from my book, Runaway, Cove. This is chapter 7. So if this book is new to you, go back to the playlist and find chapter 1. I'll be reading the entire book here on YouTube. It's a story about a woman who runs from her wedding and lands in a small coastal town who takes her in. Chapter 7 of Runaway, Cove. As Cricket walked down Main Street in a slow circle to use up her break, she debated changing into her new clothes. Her current shirt was tight in the chest, which she hated, but the only person who had seen her wear this orange and yellow ensemble for 2 days was Vicky. And that man Zeke. He'd followed her from the shop. Was it creepy? Maybe. He seemed straightforward, but you never knew. Creeper or not, the last thing she needed was attention from a man. She wasn't even 24 hours out on her failed wedding. And an emotional tidal wave was coming. She sensed it on the edge of her awareness, like a fisherman might notice the unexpected swell beneath his boat that meant a storm was on its way. But for now, her mental compartments were fully in place. She had clothes for tomorrow and shoes other than flip-flops. Vicky had shown her where she packaged and froze the previous day's leftovers, which were always available to be taken home by the staff. Every Friday, she donated anything in there to the homeless breakfast led by the Methodist Church 2 towns over. And of course, Cricket was welcome to eat the fresh things while she was there. She'd tried the cherry strudel and instantly understood why it sold out so fast. The line when they opened was almost exclusively strudel to-go orders. They'd gone through half the stock by 9. It might not be the healthiest diet, strudel, biscotti, tea, and coffee, but she'd muddle through until she found her footing. Vicky had a very specific way she liked to run her shop. When it was quiet or when a local was being served, she always took the drink to their table. But if it was clear that a large group was full of tourists, she knew they were used to the big coffee chain method of calling out a name. It would seem awkward at first, switching back and forth, but as Cricket got to know the regulars, Vicky assured her it would become second nature. This was all fine by her. It forced Cricket to pay attention to each person standing at the counter rather than blindly taking orders and serving. The sharp focus served her well in pushing aside the thoughts that had plagued her in those first hours after she woke up, alone in a strange place, questioning every decision that had brought her here. Why had she walked out of the church so quickly? Why had she thought Daniel would follow her after the uproar? How had his aunt known she would be standing out there, and why did she encourage her to leave in her rental car? At each of these junctures, she could have made a different choice. She could have said something, asked Daniel what was going on. She could have waited out the moment to see how it would shake out. She could have turned down the aunt's offer and held out a little longer for Daniel to explain himself. By now, Daniel had likely called her cell phone and realized it was in the cute satin bride bag held by the wedding coordinator. Was he panicked about her? Relieved? It was too much. As she pushed open the jingling door to the coffee shop, she shoved all those unanswerable questions back into their cubbies. Vicky had a line to the door. Given the number of straw hats and fanny packs, Cricket assumed they would work in Starbucks mode for the tourists. She stashed her purchases under the counter and swept on her apron. "You want me to take orders or make drinks?" she asked her boss. "Drinks, 3 lattes, 2 whole, 1 soy, to go, nothing fancy." She meant Cricket shouldn't put a design on the top. She didn't do that for to-go orders anyway, other than Zeke that one time. She regretted the steam milk heart. She couldn't even explain why she had done it, other than maybe to prove that she belonged here, that she had skills. He'd seen her get hired in her ill-fitting outfit. She looked at him in his well-cut dress jacket and high-end shoes and saw someone like Daniel, who'd first smiled at her when she presented him with an eggplant emoji latte art in Notre Dame. Only when he'd raised his eyebrows did she realize she was handing him the design meant for a chatty customer who had just started dating a football player. Now, as she pulled espresso shots from the machine for the 3 orders, she shook her head at herself. What had she been thinking? Of course Zeke tracked her down. He probably thought that was some sort of romantic gesture. She couldn't blame him for following up. She was never like that. In high school, boys had not sought her company. She was a loner, embarrassed by her home situation, deathly afraid anyone would discover her secrets. She avoided extracurriculars and stayed under the radar, preferring to spend her lunches alone under a sycamore tree near the back fence. Working as a barista made her more visible than she liked, but the coffee shop by the college had been insanely busy, so there had never been much opportunity for anyone to chat her up for more than a minute. And because she could do a latte design better than anyone else on staff, she rarely got counter duty anyway. Having roommates as 2 of her coworkers turned out to be helpful because they never stiffed her on the tip jar, knowing full well her designs had helped fill them. Dottie, one of the women she roomed with, regularly told her that when she wasn't there, the regulars were disappointed. As the line finally waned, she and Vicky found a rhythm, Vicky calling out the orders over her shoulder, and Cricket more or less keeping up. When the to-go orders passed and more customers opted to drink at the tables, she resumed her pretty designs in the white foam. Leaves, trees, sky. She made a dog face for an obvious regular with the poodle in her shoulder bag. This was work she knew. She would keep her head down, use her tips for clothes and food, and hope that the rest of her problems would work themselves out. They reached a lull early afternoon. A couple of people with laptops filled the far corners, but no one came in for long stretches. The strudel case was empty, and Vicky motioned Cricket to the back. I'll show you where all the backup food items are for when we run out of strudel. I'm careful not to buy pastry so that no one's ever confused about my strudel versus some crappy Danish. But we do have a selection of cookies, muffins, and coffee cake to put out. Vicky asked no personal questions, and she let Cricket go promptly at 2:30, once again emptying the tip jar and giving it all to Cricket. We'll do this for a week or so until you get yourself situated, Vicky said. Cricket paused on her way to the door. Do you have any other employees? Vicky nodded. Yes, I only come in for a few hours on Thursday and Friday. That's my weekend. You'll meet Saul. He's an old codger like me, but he makes a mean macchiato. I'll make sure he comes in and introduces himself to you before you spend a day with him. I'm hoping to hire one more. I'd like to expand my hours if I could. I'm happy to work every day right now. I don't have anything else to do, and no one else to talk to. The harsh lines on Vicky's face softened. I understand. We'll keep you on the schedule, but you'll be ready soon enough to take a break. Your mind ought to be worrying, if I had to guess. And I don't suffer fools gladly. I know that some young buck may drive up one of these days to convince you to head back with him again. Cricket didn't argue. See you tomorrow. She felt Vicky's eyes on her as she pushed through the door. She clutched her bag with her new clothes and held onto the bills in her pocket. The only place to buy food that she had seen so far had been the convenience store she'd stopped at with Miranda and her kids. She probably should have asked Vicky where to go, but instead decided to set off past the shops. It was the opposite direction of her cottage, but she hadn't seen anything on the way here. Besides, the more she walked, the more tired she would be, and hopefully that would help her fall asleep in this quiet little town where she'd somehow ended up. I hope you enjoyed Chapter 7. I will be reading the entire book here on YouTube, but if you're in a hurry, I can tell you that every single retailer has it available in ebook format right now, so you can pick it up and speed to the end. Otherwise, follow me, and when you subscribe, you'll get notified every time I upload a new chapter. Thanks for being here.